Well, hello everybody, really nice to see you all here. It takes me a lot of preparation these days. Have to put the hearing aid in, have to go for a pee. I haven't managed to bang my own middle tooth out, so I've had to put a brace in as well. So I feel like impermanence is striking fast. And this whole session has really been really interesting. It's, so many people have either dropped out or signed up at the last minute, and the reasons people have dropped out have all been really legitimate reasons, you know, proper, and it absolutely brings it home how much stuff is going on in people's lives all the time, you know. Time does definitely swiftly pass by. Yeah, an opportunity is lost. What a lesson. Anyway, I very much appreciate you being here, and I know that for a lot of folk it's a big demand in terms of time and work and family. Not even counting your own resistance to be here and your struggles on the way, thinking maybe there's a reason I could turn around and go home. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. I've got a kind of potpourri to talk about today, but I thought I'd just start with the very basics of where I'm coming from. And then I thought I've got something to say about Dogen, and then something about the actual stages that we all go through when we're on this path. But we'll get there in a second. But the first important thing I wanted to say was that according to the Mahayana tradition, we already, all of us, contain the seeds of Buddhahood. And that we are all inherently Buddha. We are it. And if you're uncomfortable in that, then tough. Because that's the deal. I'll say something about that in a second. So, the Buddha's basic teaching is that we are this, and if we act in ignorance of it, if we act in ignorance of the way things really are, then what we experience is tension in our lives, or lack of ease, or whatever word, or suffering. And it's this that initially brings us to practice, I think. There's a Buddhist phrase for it. What's it called when the need for
seeking mind?
When the seed of Buddhahood arises and we recognise that there's a word.
Raising the Buddha mind.
Pardon?
Raising Bodhi mind.
Raising Bodhi mind. Yeah, raising Bodhi mind. There is another word before that, but that's anyway. Something in us initiates this need to find some ease, and understandably, nobody wants to be happy and nobody wants to suffer. And what normally happens, or seems to happen to all of us, is the way that we think we can be happy and the way that we can think we can reduce suffering, i.e. by looking after ourselves and making things comfortable and desiring the things and wanting the things we desire and not having the things around that we don't like, is the path toward being happy. And that's why the Buddha said that we see things upside down, because it does seem to be pragmatically that doesn't work. And then the other view is that in some way there's a part of us that wants to be in harmony, that wants to regulate, and it kind of wants to bring us back to being more in harmony. And how do we do that? So there's a kind of nagging thing in all of us that and not everybody suffers from this. It's always an interesting thing to me that some people have this nagging doubt and constant think there must be something else, or why, or what's this for, or why am I alive? And part of us inclines toward wanting harmony. And once we get a taste of that, once we open the door to it, I think everybody here probably knows that it remains, unless you give it some expression, it remains a nag. the back of your mind, just get this sorted out. But for me, I just wanted to say my own sense of what this practice is about. Should we call it a spiritual practice? What do you think? Do you think this is a spiritual practice? What is spiritual? What does that mean? But if we call it a spiritual practice, everything's in question. Then each of us is the creator, using their own raw material of our lives to fully express who we are. So it's like it's like a practitioner is an artist, and your worldly life is the studio. No, when being alive feels difficult and unpleasant, that's a tough thing to take on board. But I think anybody who's done any kind of trekking or trips or expeditions knows that when you look back, often it's the tough times that have been most interesting. And I think in your own lives, when you look back, you find that the sticky bits and the bits you've got through turn out to be the parts that were most valuable. So we have that, and I'm going to read something of Dogen in a second, that our everyday life is also a sacred life. It's not separate from sacred life. So our ordinary everyday lives are it. I also like the idea of there being, not like the idea, I do know that there's some mystery. So having some mystery behind all this and some not knowing, we know this tradition is called the path of not knowing. Adds a little extra juice and kind of fascination, and what the hell's going on? What is this all about? And the other day I read something that I thought, I read it in to the Liverpool class on Thursday. The other thing, by the way, is when I give a talk, I'm always conscious that the folk from Liverpool have heard me so many times that I like to think of something fresh, and then folks who don't see me very often, whatever I say is fresh. So I'm trying to, not repeat myself, but also stay on a line that's interesting for the folk from Liverpool as well. So let me read you the story. I can't pronounce the words in it, but the Buddha's travelling, and a Brahmin who was really interested in him was following him around. And they came to some mountains, and there was a lot of snow on the ground, and the Brahmin's following the Buddha. And instead of seeing footprints, he saw a wheel of 1,000 spokes for each footprint. So you imagine, maybe it was even glistening in the snow. And so he finally catches up with the Buddha. And this kind of doesn't work because it says the Buddha was sitting under a tree. And I'm thinking he's probably above the tree line of the snow, but we'll pass that. So he goes up to the Buddha and he says, he asks him if he was a spiritual being from a kind of, what would you call those different mythical dimensions of spiritual beings? There are various levels, aren't there? So he asks him if he's a lower level spiritual being, and the Buddha doesn't say anything. And he asks him, sorry, he does say something. I'm going to ask you what you think he replied. And then he asks him if he's a spiritual being from a second level of these metaphysical gods. And Buddha answers. And then he gets to the highest realm and says, are you of this highest realm? And the Buddha answers. And finally he says to him, are you human? And the Buddha answers. Now what do you think he said? What were his 4 answers to these 4 questions? Was he of the lower, middle, higher level of metaphysical being, or was he human? What do you think he said? If it was you, what would you say?
I'm from 10 Gates Green Road.
Pardon?
10 Gates Green Road. My address, where I live.
Oh, that's what you would say. 10 Gates.
The Gates Green Road.
Oh, that's who you are?
Yeah, well, it's where I'm from.
Oh, okay, so where you're from?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. And you would say?
No.
To which question?
All of them.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes to all of them.
Yes to all of them. Okay, great. Yes to all, no to all of them.
I am the one that sees through these
does.
Well, when he said to him, "Who are you?" after responding, he said, "I am an awakened one." So, yeah. But that was after. Yeah. Well, I guess he could have said both, but in fact, he could have said yes to them all, he could have said no to them all, but what in fact was, he said no. He said he wasn't a god, and he wasn't a human. And what do you think about that? What does that mean for you? What does it mean about you? If we all are innately Buddhas, intrinsically Buddhas, and the historical Buddha says he's neither a god nor a human, what does that mean for you?
He's not identifying with the absolute or the relative.
No, what does it mean for Tim?
Yeah, it means without sit with that, I kind of try not to talk of myself in the third party most of the time.
Okay.
But I wouldn't also now sit in the absolute anymore.
Okay.
That's where I'd sit.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it that being a spiritual being, having a human experience?
No, what's it about for you? When I tell you that story, what resonates for you? What do you think? What does Daniela think about herself?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've just been this continuous, possibly a continuous point of consciousness since I was born.
Okay.
A series of days.
Is that what that story brings up for you?
I just think like I'm everything and the opposite, so...
Okay. What's the just for? It sounds pretty special to me.
What, being everything and the opposite?
Yeah.
It's a pain.
Okay.
I don't want to be labelled.
You don't want to be
Because it
labelled?
invites generalisation.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, you don't want to be labelled in anything.
That's how I think about
Yes,
it.
you don't want to be boxed off by somebody thinking this about you, that about you. Yeah, yeah.
I guess it's, well, I would say the same. I don't want your concepts to be placed on me,
Yeah.
but I guess it's quite relevant that it was a Brahmin that appears in this story,
Yeah,
the high priest,
the high priest, yeah.
Hinduism, that he's trying to say drop that thinking.
What, that you have to be one or the other?
Well, all those categories that he goes through,
Yeah.
the Brahmin goes through, what do they say? No,
No to them all. Okay.
it says I'm awake.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think for me it varies. It changes. I mean, sometimes it's hell and sometimes it's heaven, and it's
What's this? Sorry, what's the...
life. My experience
Oh, your
is
life, yeah.
the experience is constantly changing.
So
So
sometimes it's heavenly and godly.
yeah, and sometimes it's
Sometimes it's shit.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So actually labelling it and trying to fix it doesn't feel right either.
Right, okay.
What it feels for me is that it all just feels part of me.
Yeah, yeah. I find it quite exciting, really.
I'm thinking I would need to know what those things are also, and I don't. So, so in that description of what's, are you human or God?
Oh, you need to know what more detail about the gods.
Say, I am, so I am not.
Let's just say they're godly. How's that? Let's just say they're godly. So, are you godly?
I don't know. I guess because I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah, it's fun though, isn't it, to think about? That maybe that's the case. I mean, I'm pretty mundane and cynical and boring in my own views, but I like the idea that maybe there's more.
Well, we can create things with our choices, can't we?
For sure.
So,
Do you think I could arbitrarily create the idea that I'm a godhead?
no, that you can affect and impact life.
Yeah.
You could try.
Could try, yeah. Okay, so before I move on, I wanted to read you something about from first of all from Wang Po. What was that book of Wang Po's? Blofeld wrote.
Yeah.
Where's Simon? Simon will know the name of it.
Transmission of the Mind. The book,
Yeah,
Transmission of the Mind.
maybe that's what it was called, yeah. Anyway, here's a quote from it, and he says, "All the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind, besides which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow, and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things that exist or do not exist." That's interesting. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of new or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. It is that which you see. So when he says, it is that which you see before you, is he talking about when you look in a mirror, or is he talking about when you just look around in the world? What's he talking about, do you think?
Everything.
Everything?
Look around, yeah.
Okay,
Everything.
what about when Tim looks in the mirror?
It's the same. Everything.
Same. Okay. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings. But the sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it. For using the Buddha to seek for the Buddha, and using mind, small mind with an M, to grasp mind is a mistake. Okay? So that's what Wang Po says. Let's see, he says, by their very seeking they lose it, for that is using the Buddha to seek for the Buddha. Now I just wanted to reference that to a question that often comes up in sitting. So, I think there's lots of techniques presented about how to sit. You know, we have them counted breaths, Shikan Taza, all kinds of other methods and techniques. But let me tell you what Dogen says. And Dogen says, do not interfere with the workings of the mind, nor try to control the movements of your thoughts. Give up the idea of becoming a Buddha. Okay, so Wang Po is saying, give it up. Dogen's saying, give it up. And they're both saying the thoughts are an intrinsic part of what we are. So, when we sit, what does that imply? What would that lead you toward? In what direction? In the way to sit. How are you going to sit with those? Do you intrinsically a Buddha? That you need to go for a pee as a Buddha? Maybe. He also says we should sit leaving the mind to function as it is. We should sit leaving the mind to function as it is.
Don't try and control it.
Don't try and control it, yeah. Yeah. And don't have any aspirations to Buddhahood, enlightenment, clarity, peace of mind, the demise of suffering. Have no expectations. You just sit.
It's enough just to be present.
Just to be present, yeah. And again, Al, you said just. Again, you said just to be present. Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing with you, but the word just in this tradition always kind of sets me off because everything is so difficult. I mean, being present is not easy. It's a constant struggle. It's not just being present. It's damn difficult to be present. And when we're on Sesshin, we have the opportunity. Do you want to come and sit down again?
Sorry.
Are you planning to be the Brit in the oyster shell?
I must be.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Sensei, is this what you mean by right effort?
woof, that's a good question. Right effort. Yeah. So, what effort implies the opposite, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're almost like saying right
Yeah.
effort is no effort.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like right view is no view. All the rights in the 10 precepts, which I think Andy and John may talk about tomorrow, may or may not. But all the rights, I don't want to preempt what you're going to say, guys. But all the rights always go up your nose. Right this, right that. What is this right? What makes it right? Why is it right, and not wrong? But you're right. It's about there's no right. Right effort is no effort. Yeah. Or if you do effort, that's okay as well. You know, give yourself a bad time about it. You have to word these things out.
So I think another thing about effort is on Sesshin particularly, you know, I'm going to get all this sorted out by the end of this week.
Yeah.
My life. It hasn't worked before. You know, keep trying. You know, that even that sort of effort, it'll all click into place, is a distraction.
Yeah. It is a distraction.
And it's a handicap, really. Yeah.
For me, I'm always struck by that analogy of trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or taste your own tongue. There's that core paradox is the one that keeps coming up for me, that I think I should be engaged in effort of some kind, but if I grab hold of my own bootstraps, nothing much happens.
Yeah.
There's a paradox between you said, you know, don't try and change your mind, don't change your thoughts, but drop all the thoughts of enlightenment. It's like, well, I get what it means, there are sort of ways of doing it, but it is also telling you to do two different things.
Yeah, there's a lot of paradoxes in this tradition, aren't there? Which bend the rational mind. You know, you're like both can't be true. I'm going to just read you one more quote, and then I won't read quotes, because I know reading quotes is quite difficult. Because although I've got it in front of me, it's hard for you to hear. But this is the final one from Dogen. And it illustrates or demonstrates that whatever you do, however confused, ignorant or bad, is still a manifestation of Buddha nature. And this is Dogen. It's a fascicle. That's a wonderful word, a fascicle. It sounds like a fascicle. This is called One Bright Pearl. And he says, thus, though on the surface there may seem to be change or no change, i.e. enlightenment or no enlightenment, it is the one bright pearl. Realizing it is so is itself the one bright pearl. The shapes and sounds of the bright pearl are seen in this way. Saying to yourself, it is so, do not doubt that you yourself are the bright pearl by thinking, I am not the bright pearl. Confusion and doubts, affirmations and negations, these are nothing but the ephemeral, small responses of ordinary folk. That's us, guys. Confusion and doubts, affirmations and negations, these are nothing but the ephemeral, small responses of ordinary folk. However, still they are the bright pearl, appearing as small, ephemeral responses. Should we not appreciate it? The bright pearl's colours and brilliance are boundless, colour after colour, and every scintillation of light are the merit of the whole universe. Could anything ever snatch them away? Do not be anxious about being reborn in one of the 6 realms of cause and effect. The bright pearl, which from beginning to end is essentially uninvolved with cause and effect, is your original face and your enlightened nature. So, however, you and I, unaware of what the bright pearl is and is not, entertain countless doubts and non-doubts about it and turn them into indubitable fodder for the mind. But Dogen's expression has made it clear that our own minds and bodies are the one bright pearl. And so we realize that our minds are not ours. Who can be anxious to whether birth and death are or are not the bright pearl? Even if there is doubt and anxiety, they are the bright pearl. So it's the same. All these people are saying the same thing. Wang Po is saying it, Dogen is saying it, the Buddha is saying it, that we are it. And that carries, if you really, really embody it, and that's not easy, a great responsibility. Because there's no one else, there's no one out there to blame, or you know, whatever arises in your life and whatever arises in the totality of the world in general is your responsibility. And you know, that's the tough lesson in the Zen tradition. It's just, you know, finally, it is your responsibility. And I've asked you this before, and I ask it of myself always. How are you when you're absolutely on your own? How do you respond to the world when there's nobody looking? It's a really interesting question, because, you know, if you really embody this, then you know, I don't always try my best. Then it's a real measure of our embracement of this, is how we are when we're very, very, you know, in our own. You know, do you wash your hands? Do you crush the cans? Do you stop the tap dripping? Are you nice to the shopkeeper? All those things. Yeah. So I'll read you a kind of summary of this. So they're the very. I've got three. I've got, this is Dogen, well, the Buddha, Dogen, and Wang Po. Wang Po was before Dogen, wasn't he? Yeah. So Buddha, Wang Po, Dogen, traditional teachers. This is a kind of summary of Genpo Roshi's view of the Buddhist tradition, which is more like a contemporary teacher's view. And he says that the historical Buddha clearly saw everything changes, and that our ignorance, however, I'm going to ask you, our ignorance is the fundamental cause of dissatisfaction. And our suffering and unhappiness arise from our unwillingness to accept the fact that everything, including you and me, is impermanent. The very basic root of why we find life tough is that everything is impermanent. It's a tough message to carry, but finally it's incredibly freeing. You can really take hold of it. And the only solution to it is to realize that the absolute reality, that the realization that impermanence is the cause of suffering is to unequivocally accept that it is your own life. That is the distinguishing mark of your very life.
We can't accept it though, can we? Me and Tim were talking about this.
No, it's tough. It's really
we
tough.
don't really, we do see it on one level, but
Yeah.
we don't fully accept it,
No.
and yet it is liberating, I suppose, if you think, well, this me is impermanent, but because we want to believe in the me carrying on, and we believe everything else is impermanent, but not me.
Yeah.
But then again, if you can follow that, if you can really take that on board, what's there to worry about?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly.
I don't care in a way, but it's hard, you know. I don't,
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't really believe I don't exist.
No. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
We're so locked into it. And yet, you know, the kind of saving grace, if you like, of the message is that the suffering caused by the knowledge that this self will definitely perish, without doubt. Every other soul has perished. On the other hand, is the experience of the non-dual that it is unborn and undying. So we're both bound. We're both bound by this time, by this fixed time of our lives, and we're unbound by the unborn, undying nature of the very ground of our being. So, you know, the paradox is that we carry both.
I sort of feel that that going back to that Dogen thing,
Yeah.
to study the self is to forget the self.
Yeah.
That sense of, until we begin to study ourselves in some way, whatever
Yeah.
way it is,
Yeah.
then we're never ever going to know. But the more that we could study ourselves inwardly and outwardly,
Yeah.
then we have a chance.
Yeah. You know, I've got. Thanks for saying that, Karen. I've got quotes from. I said I wouldn't read any more quotes, but there's a wonderful book by a woman who was in her mid-20s, and in 1926 decided to take 7 years off solely for the cause of self-examination. And then she wrote a book about it called A Life of One's Own, a penetrating field guide to self-possession, mindful perception, and the art of knowing what you really want. And this lady, who later became a novelist, 7 years of self-examination came to exactly the view that that this tradition comes to, which is that when we work against the kind of conflicts that cause this, you know, closing in, this what's that word you used the other day about limiting us, contraction. Yeah. That when we work against what seems to be a really kind of powerful intrinsic part of the human condition is to contract, you know, is to go in on ourselves, to feel we need to protect ourselves. When we can work against that, the spacious, more open sense we get of life, the broader the view, the more harmonious and happy we feel. That's the view she comes to. Sorry, Andrew.
I was just thinking of Dr. Joe, who was going to be here, but he's actually with his friend in Ireland who's dying, his closest friend. And that I'm just thinking about Joe, sitting here thinking about Joe, and how absolutely skewered you are, because if it wasn't for he's there because he loves his friend, and that love is such a powerful feeling, and that sense of loss that we have when we lose somebody close to us. And it's the very fact of death and impermanence that makes life so precious.
Yeah.
That, for me, is the paradox that skewers me every time. Yeah. That if it wasn't for death, there wouldn't be this love, there wouldn't be this precious feeling. And it comes about because of impermanence. And the two are absolutely, to me, the same coin. But, the feeling.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Can I just say?
Sure, go. Yeah. I'm really interested. Go.
No. It's just it's interesting. I was thinking about Santa Barbara, California, and it's sunny there all the time. I mean, in the afternoons it's just sun. And I spent some time there a couple of years ago, a few months. And initially the sun was wonderful. I really, really loved the sun. It was just great. And then, after 3 weeks or so, I started wearing a hat. And after a month, I started walking on the shady side of the street. And by the end of 2 months, I thought, when is this sun going to go away? So there is that sense of appreciation through impermanence that you're talking about, Andy. And that's just a little anecdote, but.
That's so true for all of us, isn't it? If we all get exactly what we want, in the end we get bored with it quite quickly, in fact. Emma?
I was thinking about what Alan said about just being present. And for me, it's quite easy for me to convince myself that I'm present. And then it's like, but then Gordon was saying about death and impermanence, and it's like, well, yeah, but my present, no, that wasn't actually including that. And it, or I think I'm being really present, and then I'll slam the door and realise I didn't realise I was in a foul mood. So it's almost like I have to sort of work and push it.
Yeah.
But what am I missing when I think I'm being present? Because I never seem to quite actually be present.
What you're saying I'm just looking down, and I wrote something down that Genpo Roshi said, and it echoes what you're saying. And he says, being human means not only practicing to forget the self, but continuously working with where we're stuck. It means being vulnerable and human, and accepting our powerlessness as well as our power. And it means continuously acknowledging and owning our shadows. This is a thing that Genpo Roshi really worked on. It means continuously acknowledging and owning our shadows, fully embracing our humanity. How else can we embrace the humanity of others? So we work on experiencing both the transcendent and the disowned aspects of ourself. This is big mind stuff. And then we go beyond both the dual and the non-dual, and we embrace the ever-changing, integrated self. So can you really embrace this ever-changing self?
No, that's why.
Yeah, that's why you're here. Yeah. Yeah.
If there's a sense of continuously sort of trying to hang on to something, and it seems to always be slipping at your grasp, and you sort of get more kind of desperately trying to hold something, then that just sucks all your energy.
It does, for sure. Yeah.
But then, and that's a kind of a one-way, continuously exhausting state. And then if at a certain point, you say, hang on, I've got enough. In my head, I haven't got enough. Well, actually, I've got everything I need. And suddenly, the sense of lack can vanish. You realise it's just a figment of your imagination. And when that is seen, it vanishes.
Is this a statement, Alan, or is this a statement, or is it your experience?
Yeah.
Your experience?
So yeah. And I find myself getting sucked down that horrible kind of, whatever you want to call it. And then there's a point of seeing it, and then at that point you think, hang on, that's not the whole story. What about this?
Sorry, Al, you say that, yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, all your sense of lack has vanished, and rather than feel critical of the world, you think.
Al, this sounds like a lecture rather than a statement of how you feel.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And then, rather than
thank you, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, sorry, I hear what you say.
Me
But
feeling the lack, I feel no lack.
okay. Thank you.
You know, you're quoting Huang Po there.
Yeah.
And I can't help but feel with his sort of approach that if you were to say to him, "Are you sure about that?"
Yeah.
He'd probably say, "No."
No. Well, he'd say, "Ask me tomorrow."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that this drive, whatever it is, we think it is. We want certainty, don't we?
We do.
Even certainty about uncertainty, we want it. It's a real hook, and it's not there.
You know, it's really interesting how I haven't got anywhere near as far in this talk as I want to get, but I can't even read it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What is a good technique or a way to move on from the places that Alan was talking about, where we get stuck and we're going down the black hole of there are kind of two black holes in my life. One, the black hole is the idea that the self might disappear, which is a serious black hole and makes one really anxious and nervous and comes up for us all in the practice at some point. But the other black hole is when we get trapped in a way of thinking which we don't. Is this resonant for everybody? You get stuck in some way of thinking which is not good for you. You get stuck in a pattern of behaviour, and you keep doing it, and you keep expecting change, and change is not going to happen because you're following the same groove all the time, hoping that the world will listen and make a change for you. It doesn't. So, what mindset, what way of experiencing the world do we bring to diminish, if you like, our habitual habit? Can you say habitual habit? Don't need both, do I? Our habit. Oh, what?
Just don't make a habit of it.
Just don't make a habit of it, yeah. Of this contraction, that we all do all the time. Somebody hurts us, we're pissed off about something, or Trump says something, or there's something in the Daily Mail, or whatever, and we kind of we lock in. And I can only suggest that the only way forward on this, and I interview with somebody, is we have the intention not to contract. We have the intention to stay open and spacious, to not be stuck in the groove that we're stuck in, to have the intention to change. We have the intention to take a risk. We have the intention to take a risk, because when I started this talk, that for me, the practice is about allowing myself to fulfill all the things that I want to do without fear or fear of failure. Then we need to take a chance. And when we oppose that contraction, we're always taking a chance, we're always taking a risk, because if we open up and are spacious, the chances are that we'll get knocked again. Shenpo Roshi used to say, when you lock yourself away behind castle walls to save yourself and protect yourself, when you take the wall down, there's all those people out there who all see this that's your view, this vulnerable human being who's come out the castle and can be kicked. So we have to be brave. We really do.
Hey, I also think it's my problem with when I go round and round with things is sometimes just being aware that I'm doing it in the first place, and it's catching and being aware of that. And I find it a lot more difficult with feelings, because with thoughts, your own head is telling you, whereas with feelings sometimes you can be really sort of not aware of what's going on.
Yeah, feelings is tricky, aren't they, to deal with, So what do you do to do with it?
With thoughts, as I say, it's sort of catching it, and I sort of go through what I'm thinking. I sort of examine it and think, why is that catching me so much, and that's useful. And with feelings, it tends to be retrospective. It tends to be afterwards that I think, oh, that was why. It's really difficult. I do that thing of if I feel like something's a bit out of sorts, just sort of feeling where it is in my body.
Yeah, I think that's the best solution. I mean, we keep reading about the thinking and thoughts don't actually solve anything really. So if a feeling comes up and you're thinking your way out of it, how can I relieve this feeling? Or who was the cause? Who made me feel this way? And what am I going to do in response? All those things don't work. But we forget they don't work, and we all, I think we're all attached, aren't we, to thinking, why am I feeling this way, and how can I relieve myself of this feeling? But if we can kind of catch it and allow ourselves just to feel it, which is not easy, but if we can do it, in some magical way, it diminishes it,
Sometimes I've noticed when I get stuck, like earlier on the year, I felt like I was carrying a huge bag of rocks. So what I find I have to do is I have to look at that stuckness. So for me, it's being stuck is trying to be really stuck in it in some way. If you could really, when you really look at that stuckness, it sort of begins to unravel whatever it is emotionally or in thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I, in this getting stuck state and all of that, and I see it, and there's like that moment, and then there's a fear which stops you letting go.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a fear which stops you relaxing.
Yeah. What is that fear, Al?
It's a feeling.
The feeling.
Yeah.
A feeling,
It's a kind of a,
like when you're in your stomach
feeling.
kind of feeling, yeah. So we're nearly then, but what feeling is most disturbing for you? Which of the emotions is most upsetting?
Hatred.
Hatred?
Yeah.
If you feel hate, that's...
real anger,
yeah.
which you can all, sometimes for me I can feel it, it's mine. I know it's not really the person's, but I still, at that moment express it. It's normally fear. And it's normally like I practice because I want to be more fluid and more lessony. But at that point I'm really scared of being nothing.
Yeah.
Being abandoned.
Being abandoned. Okay.
Self-loathing.
Self-loathing, okay. So we've got hatred, abandonment, self-loathing. We got any others on the menu?
I've got one.
Yeah.
I thought it was fear for a long time, and now I think it feels like I thought it was fear because of all the anger and everything. People used to say to me, well, if you've got lots of anger and rage, there must be fear below that. And then when I got to the fear, someone said something to me that really resonated, and they said, after the fear there was a deep sadness, and that really, really got to me, that deep sadness of hurt or not being right or saying the wrong things, and it just made me feel
sadness. Shame. Shame's my big one.
Jealousy.
I'm ashamed of feeling ashamed. Yours is jealousy. Jealousy, yeah.
I think just want to have a new relationship with fear. I think fear and fear. Because I really identify with that contracting. That I think that's why I'm here as well.
We all. Yeah.
It flies in the face of one of my deepest values. Like even since I was a child, like when I was a child, I just wanted to be expansive and connected and with everyone.
But from what you've been saying with the earlier quotes, we just have to assume these are all the fear of being most of the Buddha.
Yeah.
And we're all negative. We've all said these in a negative way, as if they're negative, but maybe.
No, they're all the one pearl.
Yeah, that's right.
All these feelings are
But we
still
can't.
the one pearl.
It's hard to take that.
Yeah, yeah.
And do we, when we sit, we do it, or when we look into ourselves, do we not try and improve, or do we, they implied we don't try to be less selfish or less greedy, whatever it might be. We all, well, I do feel I'm selfish and greedy. So do we just not bother and say, accept that? Okay, I'm a selfish Buddha.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of on board with you on that. Sometimes you just have to, some stuff so deeply bloody rooted that you have to say, this time round I'm not going to get rid of that one. I'm going to finish now. What I've been thinking of is I didn't get round to the lady's book, but there's all the different ways and all the different traditions of how do we really embrace our lives? How do we be brave? How do we, make the most of it? And, really make the most of our lives. Time does swiftly pass by, how do we really get a handle and feel that our lives are full and juicy and diamond-like, like the footprints of the Buddha in the snow? And this is. I went to see Loving Van Gogh. I don't know if you've seen the film. It's a wonderful film. Every single frame is hand painted in the style of Van Gogh. 120 artists, took 7 years to make it, so it's a serious endeavour. But I kind of looked up Van Gogh and how he dealt with being afraid. And it's not to do with this tradition, but it's a real gung-ho message. Sorry, Andy, you had something to say? You okay? It's the past. Sorry. So this is Van Gogh. It was in a letter he wrote to Theo, his brother. And if one wants to be active, one mustn't be afraid to do something wrong sometimes. Not afraid to lapse into some mistakes. To be good, many people think that they'll achieve it by doing no harm. And that's a lie. That leads to stagnation, to mediocrity. Just slap something on it when you see a blank canvas staring at you with a sort of imbecility. You don't know how paralysing it is to stare from a blank canvas to say to the painter, you can't do anything. The canvas has an idiotic stare and mesmerises some painters so that they turn into idiots themselves. Many painters are afraid of the blank canvas. What is the blank canvas? Your life. Many painters are afraid of the blank canvas, that the blank canvas is afraid of the truly passionate painter who dares and who has once broken the spell of you can't. Life itself, likewise, always turns toward one, an infinitely meaningless, discouraging, dispiriting blank side on which there is nothing, not even a blank canvas. But however meaningless and vain, however dead life appears, the man of faith, of energy, of warmth, and who knows something, doesn't let himself be fobbed off like that. He steps in and does something and hangs on in there. Ever yours, your infinitely enlivening brother Van Gogh.
It's good that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, as a painter you would know that, yeah. But for me the blank canvas is your life. And no matter how meaningless, you've got to dig in. Sorry, I don't know more.
Can you tell us the name of the lady?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll absolutely tell you. It's a wonderful book. I've ordered it. I'll tell you about it. Yeah, 7 years of thought analysis. Yeah. Oh, Van Gogh, finalist quote. Each of us has something to do in this lifetime. We have to find out what it is and do it.